to the Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, Purpose Areas 8 and 9 webinar. My name is Justine, and I will be your moderator for today. Next slide, please. Our presenters today are Kara McDonough and Jeroma Void from the Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Starting the webinar today is Jeroma. Go ahead, Jeroma.
Thank you, and good morning and afternoon to everyone participating today. My colleague and Kara McDonough and I will go through the presentation for you. So today, we are talking about Purpose Areas 8 and 9. And through CTAS, the Department of Justice is committed to a sustained partnership with tribal governments to improve justice and public safety in tribal communities. In this effort, we try to reframe and improve CTAS through an online assessment tool, consultation sessions, listening sessions, and focus groups. Many of the responses and the feedback that have gotten are incorporated in the next CTAS solicitation, which we have designed to hopefully be more user-friendly. Next slide. The offices that are participating in the CTAS solicitation, the DOJ offices are the Bureau of Justice Assistance, our office, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the Office of Victims of Crime, the Office of Community-Oriented Policing, and the Office on Violence Against Women. It is important to note that while there's just one CTAS solicitation, you really need to look at all of the different purpose areas and the requirements of the particular offices that you are interested in. Each office will have different requirements, so you have to pay attention to each office when you are looking at particular purpose areas. A description of all the bureaus and offices that administer the grants and their statutes for each purpose areas can be found on the website www.justice.gov/tribal. Next slide.
Good morning and good afternoon. This is Kara McDonough with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The slide on your screen shows the history of applications and awards through CTAS for the last 4 years. As you can see, the amount of funds awarded has fluctuated from a low of $102 million to a high of $118 million, which was awarded in the last fiscal year 2019. Your chances of receiving an award depend on many variables, such as which purpose areas you apply for, and of course, the quality of your application. Last year, 224 different applicants applied for 494 different awards. 150 of these applicants were funded, and they were funded for a total of 261 awards. Under CTAS, the Department of Justice provides funding for 9 different purpose areas, which are noted on the screen. Each component is funded in different ways and in different amounts. That accounts for the difference in the number of awards that were made. These purpose areas are DOJ's tribal government-specific competitive grant programs. Applicants may select the purpose areas that best address their tribe's concerns. Grant funding under these purpose areas are related to public safety, criminal and juvenile justice, and the needs of victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and other forms of violence. We've included this chart to offer some insight into the competitiveness of the award-making process for CTAS in general and for particular purpose areas. You'll note that the 2 purpose areas that we're talking about today are highlighted in pink. Purpose Area 8, which, as you can see, received far fewer applications than Purpose Area 9, which was one of the areas that received the most applications. Unfortunately, each year we receive many more excellent applications in Purpose Area 9 than we're able to fund. Although we do not know with certainty the exact amount of funding that will be available at this time for fiscal year 2020, we estimate the year's funding levels based on the available funding from last year. So for Purpose Area 8, we anticipate being able to award approximately 5 awards of up to $400,000 per award. That is a total of $400,000, not $400,000 per year. For Purpose Area 9, we anticipate being able to make approximately 9 awards of up to $400,000 total per award. This year, there are 2 categories for Purpose Area 9. Applicants may choose to address any of the following eligible activities and should choose from the following 2 categories. Category 1 is to develop a new tribal youth program, and Category 2 is to continue or enhance an existing OJJDP-funded youth program. The 2 categories were added this year to support programs supported by OJJDP funds that have had success but need an additional award in order to work towards sustainability. I will be covering additional information on those new categories later in our presentation. The information presented on this slide is available on page 1 of the solicitation. As Jerome mentioned, each year DOJ uses feedback gathered from meetings, listening sessions, consultations, and the CTAS-wide assessment to make changes to the overall application. This year you will find that overall the solicitation has been streamlined and that there are a few changes that are listed to some of the purpose areas. In general, the budget worksheet has been redesigned to be more user-friendly. The purpose area narrative, question and answer templates have also been simplified to reduce duplication in your answers. And awards made under purpose areas 2, 3, 4, 8, and 9 are now being made for 60 months.
This is Jerome Avoid. I will be going through eligibility requirements for Purpose Area 8. I am the program manager for this purpose area, and the eligibility for Purpose Area 8 includes tribes who propose to develop a new tribal healing to wellness court to respond to alcohol and substance abuse issues, including opioid abuse, for juveniles under the age of 21. So we do know some tribes have adult healing to wellness courts, so this is a great opportunity for tribal communities that are looking to expand and start a new juvenile healing to wellness court. Next slide. As my colleague Kara mentioned, Purpose Area 8, we have approximately $2 million for this category. The award period will be for 5 years, and the maximum award amount is $400,000. And OJJDP anticipates making at least 5 awards for Purpose Area 8 for FY 2020. Again, the overall purpose of this program is to for tribes that do not currently have a juvenile healing wellness court to develop a court system to respond to the alcohol and substance abuse issues that you are facing in your tribal communities. Federally recognized tribes that have an existing court that are interested in developing a new court, you have to have a court structure, are encouraged to apply. In addition, all applicants that are successful for Purpose Area 8 will be required to work with a designated OJJDP training and technical assistance provider that will help you work through the deliverables and objectives over the 5-year award period. This will include the 10 key components of the Healing to Wellness Court model. And this information is in the solicitation on pages 32 and 34. Next slide. Here are some categories that the funding can be used for, the $400,000 that I mentioned. You can use it for staffing needs, equipment and supplies, training, travel, strategic planning. We do not require grantees to budget for consultants or TTA because OJJDP has a designated TTA provider for PA8 as well as PA9. So that's a good thing that your funds will be used directly for services and staffing of the project. And I will note that funds are not approved for additional consultants. So here are some additional requirements for Purpose Area 8. The limitation or participation of violent offenders. More information on this is in the solicitation. Obviously, we're working with juveniles under the age of 21. So there are requirements for background checks and things like that that will be required for staff that will be working with youth. We also have a required strategic planning year, which is the first year of the grant period. You will be required to work on your strategic plan with the assistance of our TTA provider. Travel and things like that will also be permissible in the budget as you prepare it for applications. More information on travel included in the Purpose Area 8 budget. Applicants will be required to attend strategic planning sessions, which are outlined in the solicitation. We generally use DC as a meeting location, but often the locations vary. In the last few years, they've been on the West Coast, so DC is just there for budgetary purposes. So two specific events that we generally have will be the strategic planning session, as well as our Healing to Wellness Court training, which also happens once a year, specific for courts. And the budget does allow for 2 people that you can plan to attend the training, but often if it's close to your designated location, you can sometimes have additional staff members attend, or if there are other travel funds that you have. But with this grant, is designated for 2 people. Next slide.
Okay, we are now going to talk a little bit about Purpose Area 9, which is also known as Tribal Youth Programs. This purpose area is also administered by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, just like Purpose Area 8 that Jerome talked about. That means that although you apply for both of these purpose areas through CTAS, if you are awarded a grant under these purpose areas, you'll receive a grant manager through OJJDP, and you'll submit your progress reports to be reviewed to OJJDP, and you'll follow additional requirements of that particular office. If you are applying for other purpose areas, they will be administered once you receive the award through the office that the funds come through. This year, Purpose Area 9 has 2 different categories under which applicants can apply. If you have never been awarded a grant from OJJDP, you should apply under Category 1 to begin a new tribal youth program. If you have a grant from OJJDP that was awarded in fiscal year 17, 18, or 19, then you are not eligible for Category 1 funds. If you're not sure whether your tribe has been awarded an OJJDP grant in the past, or if you're not sure which years your tribe was awarded, you can call or email the Response Center with that question. That contact information for the Response Center will be read a little bit later in the presentation. If you have an existing successful OJJDP funded program that is ending this year in fiscal year 20, and you would like to continue or enhance that program, then you should apply for Category 2. Purpose Area 9, also known as Tribal Youth Programs, is used by federally recognized tribes for a wide range of services for their youth. The funding is available to create, expand, or strengthen tribally driven approaches along the juvenile justice continuum, which means that you can use it for prevention services, for intervention, or for treatment. As you all do your planning and you look at your needs, this funding is really meant to fill gaps that you have in your particular tribe. It may be that you have funding under SAMHSA for prevention programs, but you don't have any specific funding for youth that are incarcerated in order to get them specific kinds of counseling, in which case you would describe that in your application and talk about the gaps that you have and how you want to use this funding to fill them. Or it may be the exact opposite. It could be that you have funding for intervention and for treatment, but you don't have any prevention services that are culturally based, and you want to use this for that. Remember that as you fill out your application, that this really, it can be used for a wide variety of areas and has a lot of flexibility. We do, however, suggest that you use it to propose a comprehensive project. Many times what we'll see is that tribes have gaps in different areas. So they may need, a part-time person in one part of their services and some equipment in another part of their services. And, you certainly can propose a project in which you are using this funding to fill those gaps along various projects. But what we recommend is that you look a little bit more broadly and look for a comprehensive project that's designed to have an impact in one area. And that's because we do ask you to do some strategic planning and to collect data on performance measures. And that can be extremely hard to do if you've sort of spread your funding across too many areas. We also, and this is a recommendation that comes out of many years of experience working with tribal youth programs, we recommend that you really think about with your planning team that is looking at all of the CTAS areas, that you look at, what the broader planning efforts in your tribe are and what the community support aligns with, and that you propose a program that has some momentum for your tribe. So that means something that the community will support and get behind, something that your tribal leadership is interested in, something that is needed and is timely and that aligns with other efforts that may be going on. One of the other things that we have seen over a lot of years is that there could be a very legitimate need that you write a tribal youth program grant for. But if you don't have any community support, or if you don't have any tribal leader support, and you just have this one small grant for, a relatively small period of time, it can be extremely difficult to get momentum and to really have an impact in that area. So these are the two recommendations. Again, it's not a requirement, but this is kind of born out of our years of experience. So there are various prevention, intervention, and treatment approaches that are eligible for funding and that are considered priority areas. They're listed on page 36 and 37 of the solicitation, and we recommend that you review them carefully. Under the prevention category, they are things that impact risk factors for delinquency and promote protective factors. So this may include mentoring, it may include youth development, truancy and school dropout programs, after-school programs, anti-gang education, parenting education programs. This is not designed to be an exhaustive list, but these are some of the services that have been funded through OJJDP funds for tribes in the past. The funds are also eligible for prevention, intervention, and treatment for children exposed to violence. There is a lot of information about young people and the effects of child abuse and neglect and childhood trauma and exposure to violence. There is a DOJ report that came out of a series of listening sessions. The link to that report is in the solicitation. I would recommend that you all review that as you are, designing the program that you're going to apply for. We also fund the development and implementation of tribal best practices and traditional healing methods to support tribal youth. Under intervention programs, we support interventions for court-involved tribal youth. And again, that could look lots of different ways, just depending on the support that you have in your community for these various approaches, what other kinds of staffing you might have available, what kinds of history that you have with these different approaches. They could include therapeutic services, mentoring, graduated sanctions, diversion, home detention, and other kinds of alternatives to detention. As you complete your application, what we're interested in is how you determined the need and then how you determined the program that you're applying for. We also support intervention and treatment services for children exposed to sex trafficking, and treatment services for at-risk and high-risk youth. That could be mental health treatment, it could be alcohol and drug abuse treatment, it could be the development of screening tools, intake assessments, treatment team planning. There's also support for services for youth in detention or out-of-home placement. We understand that many tribes have a need for lots of these areas and, would like to develop programs across the spectrum. And we also understand that this is, this is not the kind of funding in which you're going to be able to do that. So again, if you can kind of really think through and design a program that works best with what you currently have and what you're ready to take on. You can also, if you have a Purpose Area 8 grant, if you already are working on a Tribal Healing to Wellness grant, you can design an intervention through this or some services through this that would complement your Tribal Healing to Wellness court. We also support the effective use of data. So many tribes have told us that the improvement or establishment of data collection systems are a priority for them. So again, these areas are listed in more detail on page 36 and 37, but they are not exhaustive. As you are coming up with your program and you're coming up with the budget to support your program, what we're looking for is that the items that are in your budget consistent with the approach that you've chosen and that they make sense. If you propose an approach that will need, lots of equipment and we don't see any equipment in your budget, that will raise questions. So if you have other funding, you'll want to include that in your narrative and just talk about, the other support that you have so that we understand that you're only applying for a piece of it here under Purpose Area 9. So you can use your budget to support staffing for the project, or if you have staffing already, you can certainly use it to support support services, so subject matter experts on particular things that you need to support your program. You can use it for equipment and supplies, for travel, for strategic planning. Just like Purpose Area 8, we already are funding a training and technical assistance provider. So this training and technical assistance provider, which is known as the Tribal Youth Resource Center, has access to a wide variety of subject matter experts in programs for tribal youth. So we don't want you to spend your budget on additional on-site consultants because we're going to be providing that for you. But there are other things that you can include in your budget that may not be listed here. We do ask you to include quite a variety of travel costs. The first is for a 3-day strategic planning session for 4 people. As Jeroma mentioned, for budgetary purposes, we ask that you use Washington, D.C. That tends to be one of the more expensive locations to travel to. So that way we know that you have enough in your budget for the travel. It's been a long time since we've actually had a training in Washington. We do tend to have them closer to the West Coast or the Midwest. We also ask that you budget for 2 other training events for 2 people each. We have a conference every other year, and we have other kinds of training that we ask you to attend. And in addition, we ask that you attend 1 CTAS-wide orientation meeting.
Thank you, Kara. This is Jeroma. I'll go through the process for actually applying for PA8 and PA9. Well, actually, any CTAS grant through this process. I'll go through the next few slides. To work on your project narrative, or as we say, to build your Purpose Area 8 and 9 narrative, there is a template located in GMS, which is the Grant Management System. It's very important that if you have not accessed GMS before and you don't have a password, that you do this early just to get a handle of what's required. You will need your GMS password to access the fillable document. There are sample templates on the web link that is posted here. And you can review the documents without a password, but to actually access the fillable document, you do need your GMS password. So it's imperative that you log in and get that information to see what's required to help you build that narrative for the purpose areas that you are interested in applying for. Next slide. So the applications for CTAS are due February 25th. 2020, which is a Tuesday. We recommend that you submit your application 72 hours before the deadline. That gives you a chance to review, to make sure everything is in. If you have any questions, we do have the GMS help desk, and you can also ask questions of them and email questions or call for questions. But that deadline is firm, and whatever you submit at that time or before the date will be what we review. So we always ask that you give yourselves a few extra days just in case you need to go back in, double check anything before hitting that submit button. These are the instructions. The instructions are located at the web link provided, the GMS web link, as well as the GMS help desk. The number and email is also provided here for you. All applications are due by 9 p.m. on Tuesday, February the 25th. And again, we recommend that you do not wait till the deadline, but give yourself a few extra days so that, in case there are any unforeseen issues, that you will be able to have time to address those. Next slide. In general, the Office of Management and Budget requires that all applicants for federal funds include a DUNS number for their application for a new award or renewal of an existing award. If you already have a DUNS number, you're okay. You don't have to apply for another one. But if not, you do need to go through this process. Make sure you double check your status, and all of this information is in the solicitation. So you will know in advance if you need to apply for one or not. So acquire a new registration with the SAM system, or we call System for Award Management Database, and well in advance for applying for your grant award. And SAMS is the repository for standard information about federal financial assistance applications, applicants, recipients, and subrecipients. And DOJ requires that all applicants, other than individuals for federal assistance, maintain current registrations in the SAM database. So all applicants must update or renew their SAM registration annually to maintain this active status. So again, it's very important that you check your status, have this information up to date prior to applying for your CTAS application. Next slide. So here are some other reminders in how to apply. Only one application per tribe or tribal consortium will be accepted. What that means, sometimes we get duplicate applications for the same purpose areas, but we will only review one, and that will be the last one that was submitted. So again, make sure you are submitting what you really want us to review, because if you submit multiple applications, all of them will not be reviewed. An application can be revised in GMS up until the deadline, again, Tuesday, February the 25th, 9 p.m. And like I just mentioned, if multiple applications are submitted, only the last one will be considered. So it is imperative that you are ensuring that the last application you submit, hopefully you're only submitting one, but in case that you have some system glitch or snafu or whatever, just know that we will only be reviewing the last one that was submitted. So there are applicants who cannot submit electronic application should call the 1-800 number to the GMS help desk no later than Friday, January 24th, 2020. They will, walk you through a process and give you special instructions if you are unable to submit the application via the internet. And that, I think, should be Monday, January 24th. I'm sorry. That is correct. Friday, January 24th. I was thinking February. Okay. Application timeline. The solicitation opened or posted on December 4th, 2019. It closes again at 9 p.m. on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. If you have no internet access, applicants must contact the GMS Response Center, which was Friday, January 24th, 2020. So hopefully, if anyone that's participating on a call today have those issues or know that they have those issues, they have already contacted the GMS or the Response Center to notify them of that. And DOJ expects to make all awards no later than September 30th, 2020. Again, we can't stress this enough to not wait to the last day to submit your application. Often on the last day, because there's so many grantees submitting applications, the system will get busy and heavy, and you may have some technical challenges. And if there are unforeseen local technical issues on the last day, it can be challenging as well. So we definitely encourage you to submit early, even if it's just a day or two before the solicitation closes. It provides you an opportunity to double check your application to ensure that everything is correct before the deadline. At the 9 p.m. on Tuesday, February the 25th, no applications or any additional attachments will be considered, barring a national disaster or something of that nature. Nothing after that date will be considered.
So we have a few slides just about additional resources that are available to you as you put together your application. We have a dedicated website that has a variety of resources for tribes, www.justice.gov/tribal. There are news and training announcements, and on the left-hand side, you can go down to open solicitations, and then there's a tab for CTAS. That contains all the question and answer templates, the solicitation itself. It also contains fact sheets and frequently asked questions. You can review prior year solicitations if that's something that you're interested in doing, and there are some sample successful applications. In addition, the webinar series are posted at that website under justice.gov/tribal/webinars. So there was an initial overall CTAS webinar that just went through the entire CTAS solicitation, and there are questions and answers on there. There was a representative from each of the program offices on that webinar. There was also a budget webinar. Those are both posted. And there were also a variety of webinars on the different purpose areas. So Purpose Area 5 had several webinars this year. They have, if you go back to the chart, you'll see that they have a significant amount of funding, and they did not receive, a huge amount of applications. So they have put several different webinars together for this year hoping to get additional applications. There's also a webinar for each of the other purpose areas, for BJA's purpose areas and for COP's purpose areas and for OVC. There are 2 additional webinars that are still coming up. There's a budget webinar, and there is a final checklist and question and answer webinar. All of those are posted along with the registration links on that link shown here on your screen. If you have specific questions, let's say you get into filling out your application and there's something that you come across that you don't understand, or there's something that you need more information on, you can contact the DOJ Response Center. It's at tribalgrants@usdoj.gov or 1-800-421-6770. They may be able to answer the question themselves, or they may be able, or if they are not able to answer the question themselves, they'll pass it along to a subject matter expert in each of the offices to get you the answer that you need. You can also sign up for email updates. There's the red arrow here is pointing to the little envelope icon, and every time there's any kind of update or anything related to CTAS or related to other resources for tribes, you'll get an update. There's also an online preparation guide for CTAS. You can actually find this back at the same website that I just referenced. It is available to assist as you prepare and write and submit applications for your CTAS grant, but also for other complex grants. This is where you can find it on the justice.gov/tribal. I recommend that you actually go through this rather than the link that was on the prior slide. It'll say explore the tool. You'll have to scroll all the way down in order to find these images here and the online guide, and you'll just click on explore the tool and it'll open for you. Other additional resources specifically for Purpose Areas 8 and 9 are available through www.tribalyouthprogram.com. This is our tribal training and technical assistance provider, the Tribal Youth Resource Center. There are trainings and webinars. You can find out more. There's articles about promising practices. You can actually call and speak to some of our technical assistance providers. They're not available to help you actually write this grant, but they are available to discuss the benefits and drawbacks of various approaches to tribal youth programs or juvenile healing to wellness courts. So if you're in the middle of planning your application and you have some questions about, have other tribes used this particular approach? What kind of responses are they getting in their community? Or what kind of tools are available if I do decide to, have a mentoring program? What kinds of training and tools are available? So please feel free to use them. They're available to any federally recognized tribe. You do not have to be an OJJDP grantee in order to use this service. There are also some virtual simulation trainings that are available through our Tribal Youth Resource Center. There is a trauma-informed care video specifically for tribal law enforcement. It's a short training to allow them to use an avatar to try different approaches in their responses to young people. So again, that's freely available to anyone who would like to use it. And there are also 2 other courses that are about at-risk youth. One is for high school educators and one is for peers, and it's about learning to identify behaviors of distress in young people and how to refer a young person to help. So just the last piece of advice that we have for you is really, as you're preparing your application, is to try to plan strategically. CTAS is a very complex application, as all of you know. And so having a team of people that are looking at it together and are able to, really read the solicitation carefully and to design thoughtful interventions and responses across your public safety needs, and to really organize the resources that you have and organize the needs that you have and the various kinds of documents that are being requested of you for this, and to really assess, what is going to be most useful for your tribe at this particular point in time, and partner with, other resources that you're able to use their expertise or, parts of their different budgets across your juvenile justice continuum. And this probably goes without saying, but there are, quite a few details in the CTAS application that can really harm your application if you don't pay attention to them. So as Jeroma said, only the last application that's submitted will be reviewed. So just the detail of making absolutely certain that the last application that you submit is the one that is your final version. Unfortunately, every year we see some tribes who just, accidentally upload a document that may not have been their finished version. And some of the time that means that they don't even make it to peer review. And so giving yourself enough time, as we've sort of stressed earlier, is really key. And we know that, people really want to do an excellent job on your applications and oftentimes want to work up till the last deadline. But we really recommend that you get in there and make sure that, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and so that everything is uploaded and it's the correct version, and that you have another set of eyes on it, somebody that hasn't been working with it for a long time. If you're able to put it in there a little early, then you can ask someone else to, take a look at it. And sometimes there's actually something really obvious that's just missed because you've been, up to your ears in it. So again, just the reminder is Tuesday, February 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern is the deadline. And we're going to go ahead and take some questions now.
The first question is, if we currently have a juvenile healing to wellness court grant that will end in a few months, may we apply for another Purpose Area 8 grant this year to begin after the one we have ends?
Hi, this is Jeroma, and thank you for that question. So for the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court Purpose Area 8, the grant is for new courts. So if you are looking for a sustainability funding or funding to continue your current grant, you would not be eligible for that. It needs to be for a new court. Now, if you are starting up a new court, which I'm not sure if, how many current grantees would be doing that with their tribe, but it has to be for a new court.
The one thing that I can also offer to this question is that Purpose Area 3 under BJA will accept applications for Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court funds to support your Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. You can, if you want to ask specific questions, you can ask them to the response center, and someone from Purpose Area 3 will get back to you. But I have had conversations, because we thought that we might have a continuation category for Purpose Area 8 this year, and unfortunately we didn't get it. But I have had conversations with the subject matter experts in Purpose Area 3, and their funding is eligible for Juvenile Healing to Wellness Courts. And the other thing is that if there was part of your court that was going to, perhaps expand some kind of services that would be eligible under the TYP, you could apply under Category 2 for funding that would support that and that would, support the continuation of the court as well.
Thank you, Kara. So going on to the next question, would a program focusing on preventing recidivism be appropriate for Purpose Area 9?
That is appropriate for Purpose Area 9.
Thank you. The next question, the tribe is trying to reestablish cultural knowledge among youth so that they become reconnected. One of those activities is a fish camp. If we wrote to include families, could the cost of participation of the families be included in the budget? Or does the cost have to be specific to provide services only to the youth in the program? An example cost would be camping fees and food during the camping trip.
Thank you for that question. It's a really good question. What would be important if you were going to write for that under Purpose Area 9? What would be important is to explain thoroughly in your narrative about how your program is designed to help the young people. So it may be obvious to you. In many cases, it's something that's obvious to lots of tribal communities that of course the family and the community are all part of an effective program for youth. But it would be important to be able to articulate that fully in your application to say, here is the reason why we feel like including the families is a really important part of our intervention and an important part of the cultural component of this, and part of exactly why we're doing what we're doing. Here's how it all kind of links together to get to preventing or treating juvenile delinquency. And then if you were to do that, if you're able to kind of make those things explicit about why you were including the family, then you could include them in the costs for that activity. I will say that food tends to be something that is scrutinized extremely carefully. We have been able to include some food for our tribal youth programs when it has been made clear that food is an important part of the program or the service or the intervention, the sort of model for change. Providing food during that is an integral part. But there is a lot of information that's requested. So specific information about exactly what the costs are. If the meal is, our finance office is looking for information like how many meals are being provided, how many people, how much is the cost per meal, because what they don't want to see is very expensive meals being provided for people that are not part of the program. We do often say that if it's possible to have food costs covered through another source, that's generally the easiest way to go because of that scrutiny. There is a kind of a DOJ-wide policy that prohibits serving food at conferences. Many of you have probably been to conferences funded by DOJ and seen the signs that say, no food or beverages being, purchased with federal funds. That's because of the, DOJ-wide policy. Like I said, we have been able at times to provide enough justification to get some food costs covered for youth, occasionally for families as well. Again, there's a lot of scrutiny. If there's any other way to cover the food costs, it's probably best to do so.
Thank you for that. This next question is about assurances and certifications in the GMS. Please confirm or correct if we hit accept on the assurances and certifications in GMS, we do not need a signed hard copy of the assurances and certifications to upload as part of the application.
That is correct.
They do not need a hard copy uploaded.
You do not.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is related to Purpose Area 9. Do you have a list of what is allowable or disallowable for budget expenses?
We do not have a list. There are some purpose areas that do have a list. We don't have a comprehensive list, but we ask that you review the DOJ financial guide. There are specific unallowable costs that are outlined in the financial guide. You can just Google that, Office of Justice Programs Financial Guide, and it'll come up.
The next question, can you clarify the Healing to Wellness Court enhancement training for up to 4 people for budgeting purposes? And it says, please use Palm Springs, California as the location for this meeting.
Yes, I will clarify. That is correct. I know that we had some older language where we had strap pack training and things like that, I think, in the presentation. But in the solicitation, it does say use Palm Springs up to 4 people. That is correct.
Thank you, Jeroma. The next question, can you please clarify the difference in question number 2 and question number 4 in the tribal narrative profile? They seem to be asking the same thing.
In which purpose area profile?
I'm thinking it's the community and justice profile. I'm trying to open that right now.
And which number questions? I'm sorry.
Number 2, the question on the tribal narrative profile, number 2, is identify one or more of the crime and public safety problems that the tribe plans to address through the proposed grant funding and describe the problems with as much additional detail, including data, as necessary to clearly describe the nature and extent of the problems. Include a description of current or previous efforts, if any, that would be to address those problems. And then question number 4, describe the significant tribal justice, community safety, juvenile delinquency, and victimization issues facing the tribal nation and explain why these issues are the most pressing. Ensure that the problems described are connected to the purpose areas for which the tribe is applying. So the question is, how are those different? Because they sound very similar.
So it sounds like it is about the community justice profile. If the questioner, if that's not the case and it's about purpose area 8 or 9, please go ahead and type that in. Question 2 of that is really asking, the most important thing I think in question 2 is any data that is necessary to really help us understand the broad scope of your crime and public safety problems. And then question 4 is asking how you chose these issues that are the most pressing. So it's asking you to basically reiterate, okay, these are our overall problems in purpose area 2. And then in question 4, it's asking, here's how we determined which ones are the most pressing. It does look like, I can understand why you would ask this question, because it does kind of ask, which ones in question 2 the tribe plans to address. And then I think in 4 it says which ones are the most pressing. Given that you don't have that much, you really don't have that much room, you obviously don't want to, say the same thing twice. So if you need to just use part of question 2 to answer and part of question 4 to answer, that's perfectly fine, as long as you're sort of, going through and ensuring that each of these questions inside are addressed in either case. So I would
Thank you
say,
for that.
Sure, and I would just say that the things that I see most often listed in terms of peer reviewers is not enough information about data, which means you may not have the kind of data that you need, but it's important to go ahead and talk about that anyway, about what the problems in getting the data are and what you do have. So again, that's one of the key things that I think is being looked for in question 2. In 4, it's important that you kind of make the connections if you're applying among multiple purpose areas. If there are connections to be made, it's important that you make them in 4.
That makes better sense. Thank you for that clarification, Kara.
Thank you.
The next question is regarding Purpose Area 8. Are these trainings once per year or once during the entire 5-year grant period?
So that's a good question. There is the Healing to Wellness Court training, which is actually organized by BJA, where we have a juvenile track that is held every year. But the requirement for our grantees is to attend the first year of their grant, and then after that, it's optional. And then we also have the CTAS orientation training that is also required within that first year of your grant. So we have some required trainings and then some optional offerings as well.
Thank you. The next question, and it's regarding PYP, Purpose Area 9. If we have an existing youth program that has not been funded by OJJDP, which category would that be?
That would be category 1. And it's perfectly fine that it's not new. And you can describe that it is a program that you already have going, but that this is the first time that you're applying for funding through OJJDP, and that here's how you are here's what you would be using the funds for. And this is for everyone for Purpose Area 9. The question and answer template that you use in order to kind of make sure that you're answering all the questions that are being asked. The very first question on that for Purpose Area 9 is, are you applying for Category 1 or Category 2? So if you could, just please make sure that that's answered right up front, because we want to be able to look at all the Category 1s together and look at all the Category 2s together.
Okay. This question, it says, if we were funded for Purpose Area 3 last year, do you know if we can apply for Purpose Area 3 again this year to continue our juvenile court? We can't use PA10. I'm wondering if this person means PA8, but we cannot use PA10 to continue as we have another purpose for PA10 this year.
I was just going to say, I'm going to take a minute. I'm not, entirely familiar with the requirements on Purpose Area 3, but if you can just give me a minute, I can take a look at it. I think that Purpose Area 3 that anyone is eligible for that, but if we can maybe move on to the next question, and I'll take a look here and try and get that answer.
Sure.
And
just
Carol,
to clarify,
while you were looking it up, I was just going to ask for some clarification, because it went from Purpose Area 3 and Purpose Area 10. So is the question regarding Purpose Area 8, and do they have a current adult healing? So I was a little confused with the question.
Sure, it's actually specific to Purpose Area 9, not 10. So they want to apply for Purpose Area 3. Can they apply again to continue their juvenile court rather than applying for Purpose Area 9?
And I'm taking a look at Purpose Area 3.
Okay, and while you do that, we will go on to another question. Is it allowable for grantees to apply for less than 5 years?
That is a great question. However, this solicitation is very specific in the leadership's, direction is for the grants to be for 5 years, so that's what they would be awarded for. So we know it's challenging with the amount of money that may be that we're proposing to fund each application, but the 5-year grant period will need to be included in the application.
Thank you for that. Another question, if a parent needs a driver's license, could that expense be covered in this grant, considering that it is needed to get the youth to their treatment classes and et cetera in Purpose Area 9? I wonder if it means like a special commercial, like a commercial driver's license. You might need to clarify that. But if it's an expense related to directly servicing the youth within the grant project, is that an allowable expense?
That is an expense. I think I understand why they might ask the question, which it's that this would be something that would ostensibly be for the parent, but they're asking, it's not directly being used for the young person, it's being used for the parent, but would it be allowable because it basically ends up benefiting the young person in order to get to treatment. That is similar to my answer about the fish camp, about families being included in the fish camp or the expenses for the families being included. If you're able to, speak in your application about why you're including such things, that it's an integral part of your program is to help support the parents so that they're able to support their young people, then it is allowable if you're able to make the justification for it. I will say that, if you don't reference anything about this in your narrative, and then on your budget it just says driver's license fees, and we have no idea what that means or what it has to do with your program, then it's probably going to be treated as if it's not allowable. That's my advice to everyone, is just to make sure that it's understood, why an expense would be needed, what the intervention is, or what the program is, or what the service is, and how it relates back to the goal of this solicitation.
Thank you. Kara, out of curiosity, if an application is absolutely fabulous, it scored really high points, but there was a question regarding an allowable expense in the budget, is that something that can still be considered by OJJDP, or would it be out of the running for being awarded if there was that many points deducted because of it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in terms of the budget, what the advice that we give to, or the directions and the guidance that we give to the peer reviewers, is that it's not their job to, necessarily determine exact eligibility of precise items. So we don't expect our peer reviewers to be accountants or to be experts on every small allowability question in terms of budgets, but we do expect that they are reviewing the narrative about the program carefully, and that they're looking at the budget to see that the budget and the narrative are consistent, and that the budget supports what it says in the narrative and vice versa. So having said that, all peer reviewers are different, and they score things differently. And I would say, if it would be, given how competitive Purpose Area 9 is, my advice would be to familiarize yourself with the OJP financial guide. There's, it's a large guide, so you don't need to memorize all of it, but there's a particular section that's called unallowable costs, and to familiarize yourself with that, and to just be very conscious as you fill out your budget that you're not including any unallowable costs, any broadly unallowable costs, and that again your budget is in support of your narrative. If you look at the percentage of score that your budget versus your narrative is, the narrative takes up, a significantly more of the percentage. So, I would, if you have to sort of break up your time, it's pretty obvious that you should spend more time on your narrative than sort of messing around with, real specific allowability questions. But, in the event that you give yourself enough time, which I would recommend again, then, I would do both.
Thank you for that clarification. While we're on the topic of budgets, there was a question about the mandated trainings versus any optional trainings. The question is, can we request funds to attend optional trainings after the mandated session during the first year is obligated?
This is Roma. The answer to that is yes. If there are additional trainings that will be relevant to your project, your strategic plan, your court system, things like that, you can request to go in a budget.
And that is true for Purpose Area 9 as well.
And the question, is there still a strat pack required for Purpose Area 9 and or 8? There is. Okay.
And so for Purpose Area 9, we do a strategic planning. If there is a program that has already done a strategic plan and they want to ask for a waiver to that requirement, we now have built in a process where you can request a waiver.
Kara, if they requested a waiver for the purposes of applying for this Purpose Area 9, would they still have to budget for that mandated training?
It's probably best to do so, given that peer reviewers are really just going to be looking at the solicitations requirements. But if they were to be awarded, then they could, meet with us around the plan that they already have. And, you could submit a budget modification to move those funds elsewhere.
Great, thank you. Are we ready to get back to that question about Purpose Area 3?
Yes. So what I'm going to suggest is that you email or call the response center with that question, because I do need a Purpose Area 3 representative to weigh in on it. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. And I think it's probably best that you specifically ask the Purpose Area 3 representative about the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court and about your specific circumstance.
Thank you. That makes sense. Question, how much is a tribe's prior experience in implementing other purpose areas taken into consideration for funding? And I'm thinking it's related to the likelihood of success in implementing a project when they've demonstrated success with other CTAS projects before.
Right. So as a group, the CTAS group here at DOJ does meet together with all their proposed kind of recommendations that come out of our peer review process and come out of our office review. We meet together, and then for any tribes that have indicated that their purpose areas are linked, we specifically meet about that to make sure that, if there's a project that requires several different purpose areas, that we're knowledgeable about that and that we understand that and take it into consideration. And so, we do have that conversation. Sometimes it can inform decisions. If there are, let's just say, for example, if there's a very competitive funding stream like PA9, and we meet with other offices, and let's say it becomes clear that the tribe has multiple other awards in other categories that aren't being spent down, so they have a lot of funding to complete some other projects that are maybe have some delays or something, that could affect a decision that would be made on this funding, again, because we have so little of it, that we want to make sure that we're spreading it around as much as we possibly can. I'm trying to think the converse of that, where we're looking at a tribe that has a good track record, let's say with our office and our office's funding, they've created successful programs in the past and been extremely responsive, and we have good results from their programs. Yes, that sometimes is taken into consideration. And there are other things that are taken into consideration as well, sometimes like geographic distribution, past performance, like I mentioned earlier. And mostly those are taken into considerations in cases where, let's just say that there's a number of applications that are all scored pretty much the same score, and we have to make a decision among them. That's when something like that would more likely to come into play.
Kara, just to make a connection between that question and the solicitation, the Community and Justice Profile question number 5 does ask for a description of current and future plans to comprehensively address the tribe's public safety, criminal, juvenile justice issues, things like that. Is that where the applicant could make those connections, saying that we are applying for other purpose areas and here's how they support each other and integrate without duplicating projects?
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good place to talk about that.
Another question regarding Purpose Area 9. Would sex education and health curriculum, teen peer-to-peer support, and healthy decision-making fit the criteria for PA9?
You would have to make the case that it was expressly linked to juvenile delinquency or juvenile justice efforts. I don't know whether that is the case in your tribe and in your community, whether you are finding a link between those things. But if you have evidence that supports a link between, I'm trying to remember exactly how you put it, healthy decision-making, risk of involvement in the juvenile justice system, you would need to, again, articulate that and help us understand why these funds that are really designated specifically for preventing or intervening or treating juvenile delinquency should be used for that purpose.
Another question, can a tribal consortia apply?
Yes.
Yes.
A follow-up question, thank you for your prior response. As a follow-up, if we have not received funding for this Purpose Area 9, but have been funded COPS funding in Purpose Area 1, should we include the narrative response for question 2 to describe current gaps in our existing program, or is this question limited to OJJDP funded programs, or should we answer and provide the gaps in our own program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a good question, and the answer is really dependent on how many purpose areas you're going to be applying for. This year, I think, those of you who are used to applying for CTAS may notice that we, tried to prevent any kind of duplication and tried to minimize and sort of condense the application as much as possible. There may be some confusion in there, so I understand the question. And the answer is really, if you're applying for several different purpose areas, then you want to describe the gaps in each of them, separately. So, let's say I think you said you were applying for Purpose Area 1 and Purpose Area 9. So then you would answer that question probably with, a couple bullet points. One saying, for our law enforcement needs, here's the answer to that question. And then for our tribal youth needs, here's the answer to that question.
These have been great questions. Just a reminder, you can type in your question into that dialog box if there are others. I just have a question about existing programs that they'd like to continue. Some of their participants will be high school seniors and will turn 18 during the next grant period. Can the community still serve those young adults turning 18?
If your program is serving, so the funding that supports the Tribal Youth Program is designated for those that are under 18. However, if you have a program where you started serving this young person when they were 17, and your program is designed as an 18-month set of services, there is, we do not ask that you stop serving them at 12 months. So it just means that, if they were already part of your program and they turn 18, you can continue serving them until, whatever the end of, the end of this, however you define the end of your services. What wouldn't be allowable is to specifically recruit youth 18 and over to begin your program.
We have no additional questions at this time. Kara and Jeroma, do you have any final comments to share?
Yeah, no, this is Jerome. I just appreciate the opportunity, but I do not have any additional comments at this time.
And this is Kara. I really appreciated people's thoughtful questions and just really want to encourage you to use the resources that are available. Please, if you have any problems at all with GMS, there's a help desk that's available for you. If you have any questions about the solicitation, there's a response center that is available. There are other kinds of resources, webinars and such that are also available. So I just really encourage you to take advantage of them, and I wish you the best of luck with your application.
Thank you for your presentations, and thank you all for participating and for your awesome questions. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.